Welcome, everyone. This is the ultimate Metacritic breakdown of what has to be one of the most talked about narrative games of the year, Dispatch. What we're going to do here is give you a clean, honest summary of everything critics are saying. No hype, no exaggeration, and absolutely no paid press. Just the real good and the real bad. We've synthesized over 15 international reviews to find the true consensus. So, what did everybody agree on? What were the big criticisms? And where were the critics themselves arguing? Let's dive in. And this quote pretty much says it all, doesn't it? This is the line that really frames the whole conversation around Dispatch. It's not just a game. It's this landmark piece of interactive entertainment. And that idea, well, it's at the very heart of both the praise and the criticism. All right, so let's start with the good stuff, the really good stuff. These are the points where every single critic, no exceptions, was totally on board. First things first, the concept. Every single reviewer absolutely loved this high concept. Imagine The Office meets the gritty superhero world of Invincible. So you get that workplace comedy vibe mixed with some seriously adult action. But here's the genius part. The thing everyone called a masterstroke, you're not playing as the hero. You're the dispatcher, running the show from a chair. That simple shift in perspective, universally praised. And if there's one area where this game just knocked it out of the park, according to everyone, it's the writing. Critics kept bringing up James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy to describe the vibe. You know, a bunch of lovable, broken people you just can't help but root for. The script was called sharp, the humor was perfectly adult, and the story was just so addictive that it hooks you and just refuses to let go. A huge, huge win. This quote from IGN España, man, it just nails the feeling so many critics were trying to get across. This thing just doesn't feel like an indie game. The quality of the storytelling, the presentation, it all feels like a big-budget Hollywood production that's punching way, way above its weight class. And a huge part of that Hollywood feel comes from what critics were calling an absurdly high-level voice cast. I mean, look at these names. You've got Aaron Paul from TV and movies, you've got voice acting royalty like Laura Bailey and Matthew Mercer, and you even have massive YouTubers like Jacksepticeye in there. Reviewers across the board said these performances are the absolute soul of the game, with some even calling the chemistry between the main characters a highlight of the entire year. And it's not just the sound. Visually, the praise was just as loud. You know you've done something right when the most common comparison flying around is Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, that's about the highest compliment you can get. People raved about the fluid, cinematic animation that makes it feel less like a game and more like a premium animated show you'd binge on Netflix. But here's the thing. Dispatch isn't just a passive story you watch. And this is what seemed to catch almost every critic by surprise. The main gameplay mechanic, the whole dispatch system, was way more than just a gimmick to get from one cutscene to the next. This system was praised for being super easy to pick up, but surprisingly deep. You're not just clicking on stuff. You're a real strategic manager. You have to juggle different hero personalities, figure out their synergies, react to curveballs on the fly, and make these high-pressure decisions while the city is basically on fire. Critics found it created this incredibly addictive and really satisfying loop. And that's really the ultimate compliment, isn't it? CG Magazine and a bunch of other reviewers felt this dispatch system was so well done that you could easily spin it out into its own separate strategy game. It wasn't just filler. For a lot of people, it was a real highlight. Okay, but it wasn't all perfect. No game is. So now we got to talk about the other side of the coin, the agreed upon criticisms. These are the flaws that just kept popping up in reviews, no matter where they were from. And this question right here, this was the big one. By far the single biggest issue that the global press raised. It really cuts to the core of what we all expect from a game that's all about making choices. The Italian outlet Every Eye put it perfectly, but honestly, this sentiment was everywhere. See, on your first playthrough, the choices you make feel heavy, like they have real consequences. But when critics played it a second time, they discovered the story is pretty much on a fixed track. The game creates this powerful illusion of choice, but it doesn't really have those truly branching paths you might see in a game like Detroit Become Human. And that main complaint kind of trickled down into these other smaller but consistent criticisms. The QuickTime events, for example, felt so unnecessary that you can literally just turn them off in the options menu. Some people found that the management part, which was so fun at the start, got a little repetitive or even just chaotic toward the end. And it all feeds back into that central debate. Is it a bad thing that it's more of a series than a video game, or is that just what it's trying to be? And that leads us to what I think is the most fascinating part of all this, the big debates. These are the areas where critics were looking at the exact same thing but came to totally different conclusions on whether it was a strength or a weakness. So the biggest disagreement was over this really fundamental question. Does a choice need to change the plot for it to matter? On one side, you had outlets like IGN saying, yes, the choices matter emotionally. They define who your character is and how you experience the story, and that's powerful enough. But the other side argued that if the choices don't create actual different paths, then they're basically superficial. You know, it's funny, even the humor, which was almost universally praised, had a few people who weren't sold. The vast majority loved its sharp, modern adult wit, but a small handful of critics found it could be a little too crude, maybe a bit too online, or that some of the running gags got old. It's just a classic case of humor being super subjective, right?
Okay, so we've seen the incredible highs, we've looked at the consistent criticisms, and we've dived into the big debates. So when you put it all together, what's the final verdict? What is Dispatch really?
And here's the answer that pretty much every critic landed on. Dispatch succeeds not by trying to be a deep, branching RPG, but by being one of the best interactive television series ever made. And if you judge it on those terms, it's an absolute, unqualified triumph. Because at the end of the day, any complaints about the mechanics aside, the emotional journey is what everyone agreed was undeniable. This is a game that makes you laugh out loud, it makes you genuinely care about these messed up characters, it surprises you, hits you with these moments of just stunning beauty, and yeah, it absolutely leaves you wanting more. So, after analyzing every critic and every review, this is the real global verdict of the press. Dispatch stands out as one of the most praised narrative experiences of the year, combining top-tier acting, cinematic animation, and a story that hooks almost everyone. Look, it might not be the game for you if you're looking for deep, branching gameplay, but for its incredible quality in writing, performance, and sheer presentation, it's a must-play, a true standout, and maybe even a new benchmark for what interactive storytelling can be.